Okay.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I did want to point out that while this training was originally specific to service providers, you don't have to be a part of a formal organization to benefit from this training. We welcome anyone who is willing to learn. Um, so again, my name is Malakaya or Kaya. I am a public ally working with the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. I'm here today with Becca and Singh, who are both part of the REAL team at Women's Center and Shelter, to talk about domestic violence and intimate partner violence in the world of refugees, immigrants, and English learners, who we call REAL clients. Um, Here, I would like to point out that our REAL team stands for Refugees, Immigrants, and Limited English Proficient. However, we do believe that it is more empowering to say English learners, so you will probably hear us use both terms throughout the training today. Next slide, please, Becca. So, our general outcomes for today's training are to educate and empower service providers and the community at large. We will provide information about forms of abuse and then also warning signs to look out for, and also barriers that are specific to refugee and immigrant victims. We also hope to empower those in attendance to work with immigrant and refugee victim survivors and be able to further refer victims for assistance. Here, I would like to note that we will be having a Q&A session at the end of the training. So if you have any questions throughout the training, please DM them to me. I will be making note of them and make sure that we get to all of them at the end. So two terms that you might hear regarding this kind of violence are domestic violence and intimate partner violence. They mean similar but different things. It's okay if you mix them up. We kind of use them interchangeably. And we wanted to share the difference between them here today with you all. So, the general definition is a pattern of many behaviors directed at achieving and maintaining power and control. Domestic violence, or DV, typically means violence that is occurring within the household. And then intimate partner violence, or IPV, typically means within a current or former romantic relationship. So this term is used to kind of be more inclusive of maybe same-sex relationships or relationships where there isn't like the domestic part where people aren't living in the same household. So that's the term that we prefer at Women's Center and Shelter. However, like I said, the terms are kind of used interchangeably. It's also really good to note that these specific behaviors that are rooted in achieving and maintaining power and control may vary in legal code state to state. If you could switch to the next slide, please, Becca. So while both terms of domestic violence and intimate partner violence have violence in the name, it is really important to recognize that these behaviors are not always just physical violence. So this slide here talks about different forms of abuse. So we have sexual, which is forcing or pressuring a partner to take part in a sex act or a non-physical sexual event. Physical violence, which is using physical touch to cause fear, injury, or assert control. Stalking, which is watching, harassing, following, tracking, monitoring, etc. This can be in person or also digitally. We also have emotional and verbal abuse, which includes but is not limited to threats, insults, gaslighting, etc. Digital is used technology to bully, stalk, threaten, or intimidate. This can also be like tracking digital uses, tracking what websites are used, that sort of thing. Basically limiting digital autonomy. We also have financial abuse, which is exerting power and control through finances. So this is not allowing the victim to have their own financial account, controlling all of the finances, only giving them money for certain activities, that sort of thing, limiting like the grocery budget, ensuring that they have receipts so that they don't buy anything extra, that kind of thing. Religious and spiritual, so that is abuse that is admitted under the guise of religion or spirituality for acceptance. And then also through the legal system. So this can be threatening legal action or lying about legal options. One thing that is really applicable to the immigrant and refugee community is lying about immigration and using immigration, and maybe the threat of deportation is is a common form of abuse when regarding our immigrant clients. So now I would like to invite you all to either come off mute or put in the chat whether you have seen any of these forms of abuse, or if you would like to add any other forms that you have seen that may not be on this slide. So I also put the questions in the chat. Feel free to answer via chat or come off mute and mention anything. Okay, so we're getting some messages in the chat. Physical, verbal, emotional, financial, and legal. Unfortunately, seen most forms of abuse, blackmailing, worked with individuals who have suffered from all kinds. For immigrants, abuse of not helping partner get to important immigration appointments. Workplace sexual assault, emotional, verbal, physical. Yeah, so definitely abuse through the legal system is most prevalent. Yeah, so we've all seen these before, which is unfortunate, but it's also really important to be able to recognize the different ways that power and control can manifest. Thank you all so much for sharing. We really appreciate that. Becca, if you would be able to go to the next slide. So now I would like to talk about warning signs. Some that stick out for me are isolation and skipping social events in regards to warning signs to look out for the victim. So sometimes this can seem as maybe being flaky, when you can kind of like see through the excuse as to why someone isn't hanging out anymore, that kind of thing. But in reality, their abuser may be really controlling about where they can hang out, when they can hang out, for how long, with whom, that sort of thing. So it's kind of asking us to take a deeper look as to why this person may be isolated. Also, noticing different injuries, and paying attention to those excuses for the injuries. A huge red flag is if someone says, like, I don't think it's okay, you can't call me there. Like, I don't think you can call me at that time. Like, that won't be okay. Or not having safe contact information, that's a huge red flag. Those kinds of things. Also, one thing that I really want to point out when it comes to red flags for the abusers, is being really controlling of their communication. So communicating for the partner. If you're working with a client, maybe they're never without their partner. Their partner is taking them to all of their appointments. They won't let you talk to them alone. That's a huge red flag. Also, a huge issue that we see time and time again is our abusers making excuses for their behavior, and justifications for their behavior, especially when it comes to substance use, and saying, I only act that way when I'm drunk. I only act that way when I'm high. Like, it's not true. Like, I don't really feel that way. I don't know why I do that. And while that substance may make the abuse worse, just having an altered mental state really doesn't make them not responsible for their actions. So that's really something that that's important to recognize and remember. So here I would like to share a quote about domestic violence and intersectionality. Economic insecurity contributes to and combines with isolation, racism and discrimination, limited education opportunities, language barriers, and immigration status, and more, to shape how women of color experience and respond to domestic violence. These challenges also make it difficult to help and support, to find help and support services. And with that, I would like to pass the mic off to Becca to talk about barriers for real victim survivors.
Morning, everyone. Thanks again for being here. So I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the barriers that our refugees, immigrants, and limited English speakers or English language learners may face. Totally recognizing that a lot of you are service providers working with folks in this community, so some of these may overlap with things that you've seen. Also want to recognize that not all survivors may face these barriers, or there may be other barriers that folks may face, especially because every survivor's experience is different. So I'll talk about just a few of these barriers, and then Singh is also going to talk about some of the services that Women's Center and Shelter has and how we might attempt to mitigate some of these barriers. So as I'm sure that most of you are aware, for folks that are working in this community, one of the biggest barriers that we see is language. So clients may assume that we don't speak their language, think that we can't or won't provide interpretation. We have had some issues with interpreters, like interpreters not feeling comfortable with or using appropriate vocabulary, not interpreting all of the things that we say. Most of the refugee and immigrant communities here are small or isolated. And so sometimes clients don't feel comfortable with someone in their community knowing what's going on, and or they may have interpreters who are related to or know the abusive partner. We do have amazing relationships with interpreters, and they often help us greatly with assisting our clients, and we couldn't do it without them. But the more people that are involved, the harder it can often be to relay a message over. One thing that we see that's also written on this slide is that people assume that if someone speaks a little bit of English, that they understand all English, which I'm sure most of you know is not the case. DV is super complicated, and oftentimes it's challenging to communicate even in your native language. Traumatic experiences, or even legal terms, right? So most of us or some of us who are native English speakers, even the legal system can be complicated in English. So we want to be sure that we give folks an opportunity to speak in their native language and the one that they feel most comfortable, especially when talking about really, really challenging and difficult topics. Another barrier that we see is beliefs and attitudes, especially that may be reflective of folks in their home country. So some of our clients don't often have the same understanding of what abusive behavior is, or even know that the systems here in the US can support them. We operate, as I'm sure most other service providers do, under our client-centered or survivor-centered approach. So we really let the survivor lead the process. Sometimes that can be challenging because they don't maybe make choices that we'd want them to make. We may recognize that a service like mental health services could be helpful, but they might not like the idea or feel comfortable with the idea, and we obviously don't want to force them to do anything that they don't want to do. The reason that we're having this training and why it's so vitally important that all service providers know about our services and what we do is because we rarely get calls to our hotline from folks from the refugee and immigrant community. We really connect with clients because of every one of you here on this call, and you being able to discern, hey, this doesn't seem right. I know that there's a service that exists that can help the people that I'm working with. In many cases, we work alongside other agencies. So, one agency is like, hey, well, we can do this for this client. And we're like, cool, we can do this. And we kind of work alongside and together, because oftentimes our clients have a lot of needs and it's hard to address them with just one agency. So we really appreciate the collaboration with other agencies who are supporting our clients. As I'm sure many of you who are service providers know, the legal system can be a huge barrier and challenge for refugee and immigrant clients. Some legal outcomes are really positive, and survivors get the justice that they're hoping for. Some have a not so positive experience in the legal system. We've had some clients who just choose not to get involved with the legal system because it may be scary or overwhelming, or they just really don't want to. Some are sort of forced into the legal system when a partner may file for divorce or custody or something like that. As Kaya mentioned earlier, I want to highlight again that the immigration legal system is really used as a form of power and control for a lot of our clients, not so much refugees, but definitely our immigrant clients. However, there is, because most of our clients are survivors of IPB, there often are forms of immigration relief for them. So it's really important to get them connected to us so we can help them identify if they are eligible. One thing that we really want to stress, and I hope that if there's one thing that you take away from today's training, it's that helping and supporting a survivor, you should never do anything to put yourself or the survivor at risk. Safety is our #1 priority, always. Abusers can be pretty dangerous, so it's really important to follow the survivor's lead on what they're telling you is safe or not safe. One thing that's really important is communicating with the survivor about how to get in touch. And this can definitely take some practice. Sometimes we have agencies who get in touch with us and say, hey, I have this client. I think they would really benefit from your services. Here's their name and their phone number. And we're like, no, that's not how we operate. Only because if I call and say, hey, I'm Becca Garcia calling from the Women's Center and Shelter, it could put that client at risk. Also, we may not be sure that that client wants to be in touch with us, right? So we're trying to follow the survivor's lead. One really common coping strategy is just denial and minimization. So some clients may not be ready to acknowledge that what's happening to them is abuse. And they don't want to connect with the DV agency. They may say things like, well, he only does that when he's mad. That's not abuse. So we want to be working with clients that want to work with us. And it's really important that we sort of follow the survivor's lead on how we can be helpful and how we can support them. Another thing to keep in mind is to ask your client when it's safe to call. If you can leave a message on their phone, it can also be really helpful to use code words or phrases. So, clients might say like, hey, mom, I can't really talk right now. And then you would know, okay, I'll try back later. If you have permission from the survivor, it can also be helpful to use like a go-between, like a friend or a neighbor that can kind of let you know when it might be safe to call or not. I think also a really hard thing to remember is that, you can't save any clients, right? You could work 80 hours a week supporting one survivor, and it's never going to ensure 100% of the time that a survivor is going to be safe. The only person responsible for whether or not a survivor gets hurt is the person using abuse. So remember that nothing you do causes violence to happen. So I think that's really challenging to remember, but something that's really important to keep in mind. Again, stressing safety here. So I know Kaya shared a few of warning signs, like really controlling behavior, partners monitoring technology, or if a client is never alone. I think one really common misconception is that you have to say the right thing to support a survivor, but there really is no right thing to say. There's no magic bullet. The best thing that you can do to support someone who's going through an abusive situation is to listen. Things you can say would be, I believe you, I support you, you're not alone, we can get through this together. Things you probably shouldn't say would be, you should, ... fill in the blank, or, why did you leave? I think that's a really common question the survivors get is, why didn't you leave? And there could be a million different reasons why someone doesn't leave, and really thinking through, following that survivor's lead on how they want to move forward. And sometimes the best option is not to leave in that moment. So just keeping that in mind. It can also be really helpful to use reflective listening. So I hear you saying this, is that what you mean? Or reflecting back some of the words that they use about the feelings that they have or the experiences that they've been through. And you don't have to be the expert. That's also really important. That's why we're here. DV is super complicated. And so just being able to recognize some of those signs and suggest reaching out is like 100% absolutely fantastic. So just keeping in mind that we exist and thinking through what some of those red flags might look like is really helpful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Singh to tell you a little bit about some of the services that we offer so that you're a little bit more aware of who we are and what we do.
Thank you, Becca. Everyone, hello. My name is Singh. I am a specialty legal advocate from Legal Advocacy Department at Women's Center and Shelter Legal Office. Today, I'm going to give a brief overview of our WC&S services, noting that some of our services and processes have been shifting during the COVID, and we are always adding and evolving service to meet our clients' needs. So please reach out to us and talk to a staff member. WC&S offers 24-hour hotline, and we added text message option from last year, which we had tons of positive feedbacks on that. I will briefly talk about our real team, legal advocacy department, immediate needs coordination team, and emergency shelter and children's advocacy program, as well as our outreach and education. Real team is an interdepartmental team that has advocates from outreach and education, specialty legal advocates from legal advocacy department, and a specialized attorney from the civil law project, and our direct service advocates from shelter and hotline. We are specialized in serving refugees, immigrants, and English learners who are the victim of domestic violence. We are multilingual staffs who speak Arabic, French, Mandarin, Nepali, and Spanish. Under WC&S Legal Office, we have our civil law projects, where attorneys are specialized offering legal representation on final protection from abuse hearings, giving free legal consultation appointments each month to talk with clients on custody, divorce, and helping to address immigration-related concerns for our real team clients. By filing PFAs, protection from abuse orders, the victims are protected under the PFA Act. The abuser cannot abuse, harass, or threaten the victim and the minor children. The abuser is excluded from the victim's house, and there can be a no contact in place to the defendant. The defendant is not allowed to possess any firearms, and the custody can be addressed in PFAs as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our immediate needs coordination team can assist our clients with food, housing, utilities, transportation, relocation scholarships, counseling, and etc. Clients will be referred to Inc. departments from other WC&S departments if we see our clients can benefit from Inc. services. We also have a VCAP specialist who is specialized to help victims apply to the program to ease the financial burden they may face as a result of a crime. Victims may be able to get compensation for medical expenses, counseling expenses, or loss of earnings. Please reach out if you are interested to learn more. We also have emergency shelter. We offer a safe place for victims of domestic violence. and their children and pets. We have professionals available and coming in shelter based on their schedules. We have medical clinic resources. We offer mental health support. We assist our clients setting and achieving their educational and career goals. We make referrals to other service providers as needed. We also have amazing advocates working with children's advocacy program. We care about our little ones. We try our best to provide emotional academic support. When we had our first piano and it got painted by a local artist, can you imagine how happy they were when the kids first saw the beautiful piano in the shelter and being able to take piano lessons? We hope that they can learn and grow during their stay with our WC&S. Next slides, please. Thank you. And we are proactively reaching out and getting our service out to the community. We have brochures in multiple languages, and please feel free to check out our website pages in multiple languages that is coming soon. We are glad to go to community events table. We have a women's advocacy groups and open door sessions hosted at different community locations before the pandemic. And currently we are hosting those sessions virtually. We will be more than happy to provide specialized trainings to your team or your organization. And we welcome you to follow us on social media and like us on Facebook. We also have the interpreter training that is annually happen usually in October. In the past 3 years, we have speakers from Allegheny County Court Administrative Office. We have speakers from service providers like Global Wordsmiths to address professional ethics. We have our attorneys to talk about civil and criminal justice system. We also have our wonderful colleagues from Women's Center and Shelter to talk about domestic violence situations. We hope that those trainings will be able to offer a chance for our interpreters to learn and to understand the background of domestic violence. And we'd like to hear from you, and we do need your help if you offer mental health service in different languages, or if you have housing resources, especially for undocumented individuals. Please let us know, and we would like to work with you to better serve the victims of our domestic violence. And here's an email that you can reach out to Becca if you would like to offer those services and work with us. And Becca will talk more about the contact information. Becca?
All right, so that's pretty much all we had for you today. We definitely wanted to leave a bunch of time for any questions that folks have, and we've had a few come in through the chat, so we'll definitely address those. This is all of our contact information. Sing and I have our email addresses at the bottom. Our website is also listed where you can connect with us via chat. Also want to let you guys know that our hotline is a resource for you as well. So it's not just for those who are survivors or victims. It can be also for service providers who have questions on, hey, how do I say this? Or how can I support this person? Or do you guys have services that might be helpful for them? It's also the way that folks get in touch when they want to be assessed for our shelter program. So if someone is interested, we can connect with them over the hotline. We do offer interpretation for anyone that calls our hotline. I think it's somewhere upwards of 150 languages. So language should never be a barrier for anyone to reach out. That's available 24/7. And it's also important to remember that every single one of our services, except for our Batterers Intervention Program, are free and confidential. So just because someone reaches out doesn't mean that they need to, that anyone will find out about it, that they need to pay for it, or that they even have to move forward with any services. So just want to put that out there. And I know I see the chat box blinking a little bit, so I do want to be sure to answer any questions that folks may have. First question. Do you take women who live in Washington County? The answer to your question, for the most part, is no. So a lot of our services are limited by our grant funding, which is for Allegheny County. We recognize that the real team is a really specialized team. So we have helped a few folks who are referred to us directly outside of Allegheny County. But for most of the services in our at our agency, we can only really help folks who are in Allegheny County. So although we might be able to provide emotional support to someone in a different county, we're really limited on then making referrals within the agency. So great question. There were a couple other questions. I'm watching from Wisconsin, which is where I originally grew up. So thank you, I think, Leslie, for being here. But yes, these are specifically for the Pittsburgh region. I can potentially email you some resources, Leslie, of other services in the area. Do you collaborate with domestic violence services of Washington or other counties? We can help other programs, but there is on the PCADV website, which I can put in the chat, which is the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. You can find any DV program that's accredited in the state of Pennsylvania. Saying there are some legal questions here. Did you want to address those?
Sure. I'm trying to see the questions right now. So I remember, please remind me if, because I don't have the questions in front of me. I remember one of the audience asked about the restraining order. I agree that there are different kinds of restraining orders. Protection from abuse order is specifically designed to file against family members or that you have a relation either through blood or marriage. For example, if you are in a dating relationship or the abuser is your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you once had those relationship with, and that you are in fear of your physical harm from that person. You receive threats, either verbal or like physical, and you are in fear and you are afraid of that person. Then you can go to the family court to file the temporary PFA. And if you are in danger, like if you immediate danger, you can go to the Pittsburgh Municipal Court building, 24 hours available during the night, during the weekends, during the holidays, when the family court is not available. You can always, the client always can go there to file emergency PFA, which is good for 24 hours. And then the petitioner needs to go to the family court on the next business day to file temporary PFA, which is usually good for 10 days. And on the day that you file temporary PFA, you will get, if you get these temporary PFA order granted by the judge, you will have the final PFA hearing date on the order, so that you have to come back on that final PFA hearing date. And we strongly recommend you to have an attorney to represent you. Now, the family court is offering free attorneys for people to use to represent them at the final PFA hearings. So it is strongly recommended to talk and work with your attorney so the attorney can address any details in the order, and including custody and the no contact order through the PFA orders. So that's something that I want to add on that. And I think there's another legal question. Becca, would you be able to read the question for me, please?
Sorry, unmute. Sure. If a client does choose to involve the legal system, what are the most common cases that you see, criminal or civil, and what exactly, custody, etc.? How successful are they? Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to address this question from two perspectives. First, criminal or civil, which is more common. So I do not have any number in front of me saying which one is more common, but because of my work, we have legal advocates going up to, before the pandemic, going up to the family court in person every single day from Monday to Friday in the morning. So family court operates from 8:30 to 11, so we have legal advocates over there every day. So to help our petitioners to file temporary PFA, which we considered as civil justice process. And for criminal, we have legal advocates going up to criminal court every single day. And we have legal advocates going to DV court for preliminary hearing, which is the kind of the early stage of the criminal justice, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. So that's civil justice and criminal justice. That's two parts of our work. So I cannot say which one is more common. So for the civil side, as I mentioned earlier, is filing for the PFA order, which have 3 stages: emergency PFA, if the petitioner feels immediate fear of the bodily injury, and then the temporary PFA order, and then the final PFA order. There's 3 stages. And for the criminal side is the preliminary hearing and the criminal trials at the criminal courtroom. So usually we have simple assault, aggravated assault, then we have strangulation, we have harassment, different kind of charges against the defendant. For the second part, you asked about the custody. So our attorneys from Civil Law Project are mainly working with our clients at the final PFA order stage, but they offer free legal consultation appointment each month to talk to our clients if they have custody, divorce, or any other legal issues, legal concerns they would like to talk to an attorney. That's a service that we offer through our Civil Law Project. And if a client is thinking about getting involved with the legal system or taking legal actions, and they are not sure, they would like to talk to an attorney from Civil Law Project, please reach out to our legal advocacy department. And one of the legal advocates would be able to talk through and be able to make a referral and make appointment with a client with our Civil Law Project attorney. I hope I answered the question for you.
Yes, and can you share with folks how do they get in touch with the legal advocacy department? Because there was one question that said, who would be the appropriate contact for the Civil Law Project? So maybe you could speak to that also.
Sure. So I will type in the chat with our legal advocacy department number. That's a general number for reaching out to our legal advocacy department. And me and my colleague Natalia, we are the specialty legal advocates who specifically working with real team clients. And if you want to reach out to us directly, we are more than welcome to work with you and better serve our clients. Or you can just offer the contact information to the clients with our legal advocacy department general number. Whoever takes the phone calls, takes the message, will refer the clients to me or Natalia. So we will follow up with the clients and working with the real team clients.
Thanks.
Well, go ahead. Was that you, Kaya?
Yeah, I just thanked Sing.
Yes.
And I wanted to go back to, I know we have some questions in the chat, but I want to make sure the earlier questions still get answered as well. Someone asked to speak more about the women's advocacy groups and open door sessions. How do they operate and how can women join them?
Yeah, for sure. So women's advocacy groups are essentially like ad hoc support groups. So we have support groups that are like more formalized and meet like on a certain day and time, generally in the center. They're meeting virtually at this point, but women's advocacy groups are meeting out in the community in a variety of different spaces where women could just drop by during a specific date and time. The way that folks get connected to those is through our hotline. So they can call and say, I'm interested in a support group or a women's advocacy group. There's also a contact, I can put it in the chat box if folks feel more comfortable reaching out by email. Our staff member's name is Ani. She's our outreach advocate and she's fantastic. So she can give folks information about the women's advocacy groups. We're also creating a few more just because they've been so popular meeting virtually. So I imagine that post-COVID, we will probably have a few virtual groups as well as in-person groups. Open door sessions are specifically designed for our immigrant and refugee clients, where we co-locate ourselves in immigrant serving organizations or places where immigrants and refugees frequent. As Sing mentioned, our team is pretty amazing in terms of all the languages and that we speak. The open door sessions were held in organizations where we meant to, so that we can reduce the barriers of childcare and transportation and things like that, that we're out in the community, that people can reach out and talk to us. Places like libraries or other organizations where we know that immigrants may frequent. If you're interested in having us at your organization for an open door session, usually we do them weekly, but we can always do them bi-weekly or once a month. Please reach out to me and we'd be more than happy to chat with you about setting those up. So just to recap, reach out to hotline. I don't know if someone put Ani's email, Ani J, in the chat box, but I can put that in if someone has not yet.
Becca, were you still talking? You muted yourself.
Oops, on accident. Gotta love Zoom. Okay, I see this question here. I worked with a client where she was violent towards her partner, but that is due to arguable emotional abuse from her partner. Could you talk more about these types of cases? Absolutely. So because the legal system isn't always super friendly to survivors, sometimes survivors themselves can get caught up in legal charges. We see it quite frequently, even with more than emotional abuse, but physical abuse, where a client maybe is defending themselves. And then because abusers are often manipulative and controlling, they may convince a police officer who's called to the scene that it was actually this person who was being abusive. We have what we call a court-ordered support group, which is for folks who are victims or survivors who may get criminal charges because of their reaction to this abuse. And often folks who go through court-ordered support group can do it as a means to, either drop charges or have them expunged or things like that. You can always call our hotline. I think for the most part, folks are referred over from the legal system, but you can always call our hotline to chat more about court-ordered support group. just kind of going through the Google Doc here. So one question was, our program refers clients over to our organization fairly often, but it seems like you guys have some strict confidentiality rules about communicating with other providers. What is the best way for us to assist clients in following up? For example, can we help them to write a letter giving permission for you to speak with us? Absolutely. We pre-COVID had a form that we have clients sign that gives us permission to talk with other service providers. Some of that is happening more as like verbal consent, just because we're not meeting with folks in person. But just feel free to let clients know that they, if they want us to speak to other providers, to just let us know. For the most part, we like written consent, just because it's a little more formal. But during COVID, we've been working off of verbal consent, but definitely have that client alert us so that we can talk to you all. If we don't have their consent, then we can't. So yeah, if we do delay in getting back to you, that may be why, because we're trying to get in touch with the client to confirm that we can talk to you. Another great question, and the answer is yes. Are there or is there help or support groups for men who deal with domestic violence as well? So we don't have any groups that are specifically for men. We absolutely do serve men. I don't know that there are any men in any of the support groups that currently exist. But yes, absolutely. Even though our name is Women's Center and Shelter, we do assist men. It's just, I don't think we have enough male survivors at like any given time to form a support group that would be more than a couple people. We also do provide shelter to men. We just don't do it at our location. If men do need emergency shelter, generally we house them off-site. Just wanted to let you know. Let me see. Is there any other questions?
I think those are all of the questions that I personally saw in the chat.
There might have been a direct message one to me. Let me see.
Do we answer the question that is asking if I worked with a client where she was violent towards her partner, but that is due to the arguable emotional abuse from her partner? Could you talk more about this type of cases?
Yeah, that I talked about the court-ordered support group a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, I would say if you have folks that just want to talk about what their options are, like this client who may be going through legal issues, to just feel free to refer them over. So yeah. Also, if you want to get in touch with either Sing or I, but you forget what our email addresses are, who our names are, you can always call our hotline and say, you know, we want to talk to someone on the real team, or we want to talk with someone who works with refugees and immigrants. And the hotline can always either put you in our, can give you our email addresses. Maybe they don't give our email addresses out directly, but they can put you in our voicemail so we can get back to you. So if for some reason you lose our contact information, just go to the website, call our hotline, and they can connect with you.
Sure. And I also want to add one thing that I, from my legal perspective, where I work in the legal office, to that question is, when we see a lot of male victims on the criminal case and a female arrested as the defendant on the case, we do not just assume that the defendant on the criminal case is the actual abuser in the relationship. We will go to the courtroom and we will support there, and then we will depending on the case, how it goes, we support the real true victim of domestic violence. It doesn't matter if that person is the defendant on the criminal case. It sounds like defendant, he or she will be the abuser. Now, we do not support our victims like this way. We want to support the victim of domestic violence. It doesn't matter where the position you are at that moment.
Awesome. Any other questions from folks? Well, thanks again to everyone for coming today. As you can see, our contact, oh, I see the chat blinking again. Oh, go ahead, Apple. Yeah, if you have another question, feel free. While Apple is sending that to us, I just wanted to flag that Malachi sent out an email earlier with the link to today's presentation. So we will also share the PowerPoint there, and most likely we'll put the presentation up on our website. So if you want to refer back. Other question is, I have an experience where the client didn't want me to be present because the immigrant community is rather small in Pittsburgh, and she assumed she would encounter me elsewhere. I told her about confidentiality, but she was skeptical. What should I do in this case? I think it's really hard because we can give, essentially what our job is to give folks options and information, and they can kind of move forward with that as they wish. I'm not sure if you're an interpreter, Apple, or a service provider, but sometimes when we do have folks who are weary of confidentiality, we may offer an interpreter. Okay, we may offer phone interpreting for folks so that it's a little less personal. It's not as ideal as an in-person interpreter, right? But it can kind of create that little barrier where folks feel a little more safe. So sometimes we do offer phone interpretation if people feel a little uncomfortable. I know that doesn't super help your situation, but that's something that we do offer. I think there was actually one more question that I might have missed, which was something about how do I have a conversation with someone? How do I, I'm not sure where it is. I think someone might have asked, like, how do I talk to someone about like connecting with your services? So with that piece of like reflective language, it can be really helpful to say, like, I'm hearing you talk about your relationship or your partner in a not so like positive way. You know, how do you feel about your relationship? Asking questions that are open-ended to kind of discern how they feel about what's going on can be helpful. And in terms of helping them connect with our services, it might be something along the lines of, you know, you said that you didn't feel like your relationship was very healthy or that it was really positive for you. You know, I have some people who help others who might be going through similar situations. Should we call them together, or can I give you their information so you can connect with them? Warm handoffs are really great if you can help them to connect with us at the same time. So that's just a way that you might connect. But yeah, it is 12 o'clock right now. We'll stay on for a few extra minutes if folks do want to ask questions outside the group. Also, our email addresses are here, so feel free to send us an email. I know someone was looking for brochures, so if that's something that you would like, please feel free to email. If you have other resources like housing or mental health services in other languages, please also feel free to reach out. We are always looking for extra resources to send our clients for referrals. And thanks again for coming. We really appreciate it.
I do. Yeah, there's one other question. Sing, do you want to take that one away?
Sure. Yeah, if feel free to jump off if you have to go, but if you would like to stay, I would like to spend 1 minute on that last question. Is there something that can be done in case where the client has been harassed by the current girlfriend or their ex? Is there any way to extend the responsibility to him? So there are two ways two things that I want to mention. First, by filing protection from abuse order, the order cannot directly file against that ex-girlfriend or current girlfriend because of the lack of relationship. But there is a no contact from the defendant. So the defendant cannot contact the victim directly or indirectly, which means the defendant cannot ask a third party like a family member or a friend or a stranger to contact the victim on his behalf, on the defendant's behalf. So if there's an evidence saying that, for example, the ex-girlfriend saying that leave him alone, or I'm going to like making those threats, and he asked me to do that, he asked me to tell you. So that is an evidence saying that he is using a third party to contact you. That's a violation of the PFA order, and that can hold him accountable for that. And the other one is criminal. So you can always contact the law enforcement, call the police to file criminal charges directly against that person, so that there will be a separate criminal charges against that person going on. So that's two ways that you can do it. And if you have more detailed questions, please feel free to reach out to us, to the legal advocacy department. We can address that case by case. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause the recording or stop the recording so that if any folks want to ask questions that are not on camera, that are not going to be recorded, they have an opportunity to do so. I know that there's still a handful of folks left, so I'm gonna stop the recording if there's any questions that you wouldn't want recorded.